السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
Uh, Everybody can see the PowerPoint.
السلام عليكم يا شيخ.
I shared the desktop. You can see it, right?
Yes شيخ, we can see it.
Is it clear?
Yes شيخ.
Okay. Is the voice clear, inshallah?
Yes, alhamdulillah شيخ, it's clear.
Alhamdulillah. So we will start right now, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المرسلين ورحمة الله للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. All the praise and all the glory is due to Allah, and I bear witness that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his last prophet and messenger. Peace of Allah be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and those who followed his path up to the day of the judgment. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the beginning of these sessions to bless our times and to bless our journey in getting beneficial knowledge which avails a benefit for us in this life and for the hereafter. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send all the blessings in our time, in our families, and in each effort that we actually do in acquiring and getting with the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My brothers and sisters, inshallah, I will take the honor of teaching two major courses in our meetings. The first course will be, inshallah, on Hadith terminology. We will basically, as you saw the course description, the
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
we continue, inshallah. So we basically, my brothers and sisters, we included that in the course description. So the goal of today's session will be actually elaborating the basic course description, in addition to explaining, inshallah, the first lesson, which will be an introduction to the hadith sciences. So the primary objective of this course is to provide an intermediate level course on Mustalah al-Hadith. And Mustalah al-Hadith is basically a science which discuss the mechanism, the tools, and the methodologies the scholars of hadith have used to preserve the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So basically, it is a science which is used to discriminate the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the basic goal of this course is to make us familiar with the terminology used and the methodology conducted by the scholars of hadith, so that we will, inshallah, when we quote hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when we read a text, a report, whether it is attributed to the Messenger ﷺ or to any of his companions, we will have the capacity to understand and to discern which hadith is authentic and which one is not authentic. This is the primary focus of this course. So we'll discuss basically the definition of hadith, and then we will go through the classification of hadith according to authenticity, according to the number of narrators, according to the weakness in the isnad, weakness in the matn, whatever. So we will basically tackle the methodology that the scholars adopted for preserving the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the basic goal, and for sure we'll have some other goals. Like, for example, we are going to dedicate one of our lessons, inshallah, which will discuss hadith and Orientalism, which basically talking about some of the misconceptions which were raised against hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the West, and this is just to open the door for everybody when you would like actually to go through. But the primary cause or the primary objective, as I mentioned to all of you, that it is basically to discern the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and to make sure which one is authentic and which one is not. In reaching this goal, we are going to have a primary source, and this source is the book which is entitled Hadith Terminology and Classification. And I think this book, you know very well, it was published by IIPH. This is our basic syllabus. In addition to the fact that I don't like to restrict ourselves to just only one source, but if you see on the Dropbox, I shared with you some other sources which may be a source of an inspiration and a source of information for everybody. So basically, we have one syllabus, one basic textbook, in addition to the fact that we have some other secondary sources which will help us, because I would like actually to cover a number of issues and subjects. So sometimes we find this topic is better discussed in the other source, but primarily we will rely on one source and the others will be, inshallah, for your benefit. What is required from everybody, inshallah, is to read the chapters, to refer to the PowerPoints, to attend the sessions that we have, and to answer the weekly quiz. And I have already also uploaded the weekly quiz on the Dropbox. So, and as it is mentioned also in the course description, that we have already put some, we have already uploaded, we have already uploaded all those materials for public use of the brothers and sisters. And in addition to the attendance, which is very important, we set up also the grading of this course and how it goes. So inshallah, this is primarily the methodology that we will have. We will, inshallah, focus on a chapter in each week. Also, I added my email in case you have any questions or inquiries. You can actually raise them in the class, and also you can raise them by sending an email to me. I will be pleased, inshallah, to answer your questions. Before starting the first lesson, if anybody, Jazakallah khairan, Brother Muhammad. Brother Muhammad is going to share the email. So please, if you have any further questions or if you have any comments, what suggestions actually that we go, I will be so pleased to hear from you, so that we have, you know, a matter of a channel of presenting something which is compatible for everybody. And at the same time, I'm fully convinced that the student plays a massive role actually in making the course successful. So I would like actually this to have self-motivation from you. My brothers and sisters, first and foremost, we need to purify and rectify our intentions, which is we are learning, subhanallah, and Allah made all those facilities easy for us and accessible for us, basically, inshallah, to learn more and to remove some of the, you know, of ignorance that we basically have ourselves, and also to have the intention, inshallah, of teaching it and spreading the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala everywhere. You have a big responsibility for your fellows, for yourselves first, and for your families, and for your fellows in the West, especially because it is a big, there are big turmoils and trials, tribulations. So you are in the front line of defending the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and spreading it. So I think the best way and the most appropriate way and the best path that you take in your life is to seek knowledge and to share it with whomever you are able, inshallah, to share. So please, if you have any comments before starting the first lesson, I will be so pleased, inshallah, to hear from you. Anybody has?
Sheikh, who was the first person that put this science of Mustalah? When did it come about and who put it together?
This is what we will, inshallah, discuss, inshallah, in today's and the next session, inshallah. But basically, it will be, he is an Imam al-Shafi'i in his very well-known book, Al-Risala of Imam al-Shafi'i. But he is, Imam al-Shafi'i, as we will discuss, inshallah, that he put some other aspects related to usul and also to mustalah. But technically, we can say that Al-Rahawan is the first one to dedicate a whole book, basically written for Mustalah al-Hadith. And his book is Al-Muhaddith al-Fasil Bayn al-Rawi wal-Wa'i. Brother Razak is asking, let me see how chats. Okay. I have a general question. Is there any way you would recommend we take notes for these lessons? I think you can take notes when I'm explaining the lesson, inshallah. And if there is anything confusing or anything ambiguous, you can actually refer to me questions. In addition to having the PowerPoint with you and the textbook. So this is an integrated, you have all means, inshallah, of getting better idea of the whole lesson, inshallah. Any further questions before starting our session, inshallah? Another comment. We are expected to have major assessments and or exams throughout the course, along with regular homework. We are supposed, inshallah, to have a weekly quiz. So we will have a weekly quiz. In addition to having, within those homeworks, you will find some assessments and some assignments. But it depends, my brother Ahmed, brother Salman Ahmed. It depends on your himma, your own, self-motivation and your readiness to, inshallah, study and to go deeper. So we will try, inshallah, to set a balance because I know most of you, you are university students, so you are familiar with the research work and searching and this stuff. So I don't like actually to just make our session just imparting and sharing information without actively participations from you. So this will, inshallah, be well manifested in the assignments and term papers and these stuff, inshallah. Okay. Okay. So now I'm, inshallah, sharing the desktop. With you. Today's session, as I mentioned to you, that it will so everybody sees the already sees the PowerPoint in front of him, right? Okay. So in today's session, it will be basically an introduction. I gave this title, The Story of Hadith 1. So I'm going actually to explain in 2 sessions on the story of Hadith. In this session, I'm going to discuss, inshallah, what is the meaning of the Sunnah, what is Hadith, basically because these are the primary terms that we are using actually throughout our course. And number 3, we are talking briefly about the authority of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the authority of the Sunnah or the Messenger, peace be upon him. Finally, we will delve into the journey of Hadith on the history of the preservation of the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam throughout the history. In writing those notes, I intensively relied on Hadith terminology and classification, a handbook, and also I relied on Hashim Kamali, a textbook of Hadith studies, authenticity, completion, classification, and criticism of Hadith. I have also relied on Jamaluddin Zarabozo, the authority and importance of the Sunnah. The first question which is raised in our discussions is, we heard about the word Sunnah and the word Hadith. And most of the cases, those 2 words have been used interchangeably. So what is the meaning of the Sunnah and what is the meaning of Hadith? The word Sunnah, my brothers and sisters, you know that it is a technical term, and this technical term has been used in 2 senses. It is used in a dictionary sense, or what you can call lexical sense, because this word has been used by the Arabs before the advent of Islam. So when the Prophet ﷺ came, after the advent of Islam, this same word acquired a new meaning. So basically, or lexically, the word Sunnah means a manner of acting or conduct of life, whether it is basically bad or evil or good. So Sunnah is a model, it's an example, a way, a course, a rule. And this meaning has been actually used in the Quran and also in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if we read this ayah from Surah Fatir, ayah number 43, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word Sunnah here, and he's saying, استكبارا في الأرض ومكر السيء ولا يحيق المكر السيء إلا بأهله فهل ينظرون إلا سنة الأولين فلن تجد لسنة الله تبديلا ولن تجد لسنة الله تحويلا. You notice when I was reading it in Arabic that the word Sunnah has been repeated mostly 3 times and this text. In these three times, the word sunnah means a way of acting. It means a way of acting. And the ayah is all about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deals with arrogant nations who actually plot evil against Allah and against the religion of Allah, and how Allah plot against them to encompass them. And then Allah subhanahu said that this is the normal way, the normal sunnah, the normal way of acting with those people who show arrogance against the revelation of Allah. So the Quran used the word sunnah here in its literal sense to mean rule of acting, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses with people of such manner or of such way. It is also used in this sense in the ayah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, say to those who have disbelieved that if they seize what previously occurred will be forgiven for them. But if they return to hostility, then the precedent of the former. So here, my brothers and sisters, the word sunnah, how it was translated. Can anybody tell me? The word sunnah here, sunnat Allah, how it was presented in the English text. Which word that expresses the word sunnah? Can anybody answer? Sunnat Allah wa lan tajida li sunnati Allahi tabdila. So it is
the way of Allah, Sheikh?
Exactly, or the precedent here. Then the precedent of the former rebellious people has already taken place. So it is in its literal sense. Jazakallah khairan. So it is also in the same way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that's our established way for those we have sent before you, O messenger, and you will not find in our way any alteration. Even the Prophet ﷺ used it in this hadith that you have. So how the Arabs use the word sunnah in their literature, in their own poetry, they use the sunnah to refer, the Arabs, they were very passionate about talking about the stories of their forefathers. So they go to relate so many stories about their grandfathers and sisters. So they say that this is the sunnah of my father, this is the sunnah of my tribe, this is the sunnah of such and such. So the Arabs use the word sunnah of looking at a precedent or a normative behavior of somebody, or the way of behaving of a certain body or a certain tribe or a certain group of people, So the word sunnah has been used in this text in front of you. And I would like you to concentrate on this text. Why? Simply because the word sunnah causes some confusion for some people. The Prophet ﷺ has been reported as saying, he who sets a good precedent in Islam, he who sets a sunnah in Islam, there is a reward for him for this act of goodness, and reward of those who have acted according to it subsequently without any deduction from their rewards. And he who sets in Islam an evil precedent, there is upon him the burden of that and the burden of him who have acted upon it subsequently without any deduction from their burden. My brothers, is this text because of misunderstanding this text, many people, they thought that it is permissible to introduce a good sunnah in Islam. And there is a good sunnah and there is a bad sunnah in its technical sense, which means that it is, if you introduce something in our ibadah, a new type of prayer, for example, or commemorating the birthday of the Prophet ﷺ, so it is a good sunnah. They say it's a good sunnah. Basically because they have actually they based their opinion on this hadith in front of you. You understand what I'm saying? So do you think that there is a source of confusion? Can anybody answer them back? Those people, they say, yes, we introduce new things in Islam because the Prophet ﷺ said, he who sets a good precedence in Islam, he who sets a good sunnah in Islam. So this is something which is rewardable. So as much as sunan that we introduce to Islam, they are good, we will accrue a reward for our service and for people that we guided. Can anybody answer this? My brothers and sisters?
Sheikh, what was the question?
My question is, some people, some groups of people, they use this text in front of us, okay, to say, yes, you can introduce innovations, but they are good sunnah, because the Prophet ﷺ said, he who sets a good sunnah in Islam, there is a reward for him for this act of goodness, and reward of that also who acted according to it subsequently. Did you understand my question?
Sheikh, it could possibly be referring to setting a good sunnah in the dunya or the worldly matters, not matters of the deen, which is only legislated by Prophet and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I think.
But there is something in the context which supports that it is for the hereafter, for the akhirah. Why? Because we are expecting a reward for it in the hereafter.
Sheikh, could it mean like reviving, or like if there's a sunnah that's forgotten, someone comes and revives it?
This is a good answer, and also that's very good. And also here, the word sunnah, my brothers and sisters, has been used in its lexical meaning, which is way of acting. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't refer to the technical sunnah. It doesn't refer to the what you can call the practice of the Prophet ﷺ that we are going to explain right now. So the word the sunnah in this hadith has been used in its literal sense, which means a way of acting. So the hadith says, he who sets a good way of acting in Islam. You understand? It doesn't necessarily mean that he introduces something new in religion. Why? We could understand it from the context of the hadith. This hadith has been issued by the Prophet ﷺ in the context of a group of people who came to the Prophet and they were very destitute and needy. So the Prophet ﷺ invited the people to give them charity. So a man came and he put a sack full of food or full of stuff for them. So the Prophet ﷺ smiled and he said this hadith. So the original act of charity is already enacted in Islam. But this man, when he came, he revived an example. You understand? He acted in a good way. So the people followed him. So the Prophet ﷺ said, who follow somebody in something which is good, which is originally enacted in Islam, so Allah will reward him and reward the people who followed him. And reward him for the people who followed him. You understand what I'm saying, my brothers and sisters? Everybody understand this point? So the word sunnah here has been used in its literal sense, not in its technical sense. You got it? Everybody knows? Everybody, no confusion about this issue?
Yep, Sheikh.
Yes, Sheikh.
Okay, Jazakumullah. So now let us move to the technical meaning of the word sunnah. By the technical meaning, that how the word sunnah is used by the Muslim scholars. The word sunnah has been used in different meanings according to the context it has been used. For example, if I say to any of you now, to Brother Ibrahim, Brother Muhammad, if I ask you this question, if I say offering or observing 2 raka'ats before the obligatory dhuhr prayer is sunnah, what does the word sunnah here means in this context? Or Brother Salman, if I say praying 2 rak'ats before dhuhr is sunnah, do you hear me?
Sheikh,
I said,
we would say that it was the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
okay. So if I say praying a duha prayer, you know, a duha prayer is a sunnah. What does it mean?
This was something that the Prophet ﷺ performed.
Okay, for sure. What else? So if I ask you a question, is it synonym to the word obligatory, or it is synonym for the word mustahab? Exactly as Brother Razak said, that it is not a fard, it is mustahab. So the word sunnah in this context is been used to mean what? Mustahab or recommended. So this is who used the word sunnah in that meaning. It is the fuqaha, the jurists. You understand? So the jurists, when they say something is sunnah, you immediately understand that they mean that it's recommended. You understand what I'm saying? It's not compulsory act. So when they say offering actually Salatul Duha is mustahab or it is sunnah, and they use some other terms in this context. So the word sunnah is used to mean recommended in the terminology of whom? In the terminology of whom? The terminology of the fuqaha, right? That's what I'm saying. In the terminology of the fuqaha. Number two, there are some people when they say sunnah, we mean that there is here, according to the scholars of Aqidah. Scholars of Aqidah, when they say sunnah, you know what do they mean by the word sunnah? They say they Ahlul Sunnah. Okay, so Imam Ahmad, he had a very important book which he entitled I'tiqadu Ahli Sunnah. When they say that this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the people of Aqidah, what do they mean? When they say these tenets are the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, they mean that these are the foundations of faith, the obligatory deeds, the matters of creed and definitive rulings of Islam. You understand what I'm saying? So when the word sunnah is being used by the scholars of Aqidah, it has a different shade of meaning. It has a different meaning at all. So don't be confused when you read the books of Aqidah and he says to you, okay, so it is actually, these are the sunnah tenets. Don't believe that it is these tenets are recommended. You can believe in them or not. No, when they mention the word sunnah in their books, it means that everything included under this title is obligatory and definitive, and it represents the basics of Islam. Okay, so now the people, that scholars of Aqidah, use the word sunnah differently. Understand what I'm saying? So they are different from the fuqaha. Okay, what about the traditionists, the scholars of hadith? The scholars of hadith that we are concerned with, when they say this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, pay attention. When the scholars of hadith mention the word sunnah, they say that everything which includes, number one, you see the chart in front of you, the word sunnah, according to the scholars of hadith, it includes sayings of the Prophet, actions of the Prophet, not only the actions of the prophets, but the tacit approvals. When the Prophet ﷺ is silent about something, it means that it is a sunnah. Because the Prophet ﷺ, when he is silent about something, it means that he approved it, and it's a part of his ahadith. Whether the Prophet ﷺ was attending in the situation where he issued his tacit approval or not, as we are going to explain later, inshallah. Moreover, the word sunnah is also extended to include the biography of the Prophet ﷺ. We give a title, we give a term in Arabic about the biography of the Prophet. Who knows? You remember? We have a title for this. We have two titles.
The Sirah.
Sirah, excellent. And also we have Maghazi, right? So the Maghazi are a part of the Sunnah literature. You understand what I'm saying? Also, the khasa'is, the peculiar features of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ had something which were peculiar, the mu'jizat, the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ. This is a literature which is called al-khasa'is, like the book of khasa'is by Imam al-Bayhaqi. It is an offshoot of Sunnah. Yes, it is a branch of Sunnah. even a description of the personality of the Prophet ﷺ, the physical description of the personality of the Messenger ﷺ is a part of Sunnah. Do you remember the title given to the physical description of the Prophet, my brothers and sisters? Does anybody understand? Does anybody remember? You have a very famous, yeah, excellent. This is called a shama'il. Exactly. So according to the scholars of hadith, they mean by the word the sunnah, they mean what? They mean everything that the Prophet is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, or related to the Prophet ﷺ, or about the Prophet ﷺ. So the scholars of hadith, my brothers and sisters, they are concerned with everything related to the personality of the Prophet, including his sayings, his actions, his tacit approvals, even the seerah, the biography of the Prophet ﷺ, the khasa'is, the peculiar features of the messenger, and also the description of his personality, either his manners, so the adab, you know, al-adab al-mufrad by Imam al-Bukhari, the manners of the Prophet ﷺ, and the behavior of the Prophet ﷺ, and description of his physical traits and personality is also included in the term sunnah. So it depends on everybody's concern. When the people of Aqidah were basically concerned with the obligatory tenets and foundations of belief, they called the word sunnah for what? They called it for everything which is obligatory on a Muslim to believe in and to act upon. When the scholars of fiqh were classified, were actually concerned with showing the legal determination or the legal value of people's actions, so they have 5 values. You remember the scholars of fiqh? They have 5 values. You remember them? It's wajib. Number 2 is what? Who can help me?
Mustahab.
Mustahab, which is equal and synonym to
Sunnah.
To sunnah, to raghiba, to recommended, emphatically recommended, etc. Number 3 is
Mubah.
permissible, mubah, which is permissible, exactly. Number 4 is
Makruh.
makruh, disliked. And finally,
Haram.
haram, which is prohibited. So these are, so sunnah, according to the scholars of fiqh, the fuqaha, it occupies what? It occupies this 3rd category, which is the 2nd category, which is recommended or mustahab. There are a 4th category of scholars, who are the scholars of usul al-fiqh. You know usul al-fiqh, right? Can anybody just give me an idea about what is usul al-fiqh is about?
Sheikh, the principles of fiqh, like
Yes, yes. You translated the word usul not in the correct way, because usul doesn't mean principles. Usul means adilla. Usul means what? Proofs. So usul al-fiqh is basically concerned about the proofs of fiqh, like the Quran, the Sunnah, analogy, ijma', etc. You know? So this is the basic concept of usul al-fiqh, right? So usul al-fiqh, according to the scholars of usul al-fiqh, when they say sunnah, can I ask you a question? The scholars of usul are concerned about what? About the legal determination that they deduce from the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ, right? So they are concerned about the legal rulings that they get from the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. I ask you a question. If we say that how many gray hair the Prophet had in his beard, can we get a legal ruling from this? Can you tell me?
No.
If we say, yes, the Prophet ﷺ slept for 3 minutes in this time. The Prophet ﷺ used to eat pumpkin. The Prophet ﷺ loved this and that. Do you think that this entails a legal ruling? It doesn't entail a legal ruling. That's why, according to the scholars of usul, when they say the word the sunnah for them, they restrict themselves to the aspects and types from which they can deduce, and it becomes authoritative. So it included the speech, actions, and tacit approvals of the Prophet ﷺ. If I ask you a question, does the shama'il is included in the term sunnah according to the scholars of usul? What do you say? The word, the shama'il, the physical description of the Prophet ﷺ is included?
No,
included?
no, it is not.
No, it doesn't include. It is not included because it's not authoritative. You understand what I'm saying? the things which are peculiar to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are not authoritative. Why? Because they are considered with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's not shared by his ummah. The ummah cannot imitate him, like for example, in enjoining consecutive fasting without breaking this fast. The sunnah cannot imitate the Prophet ﷺ in getting more than 4 wives at the same time. This is something peculiar for the Prophet ﷺ. You understand what I'm saying? So this is briefly, my brothers and sisters, the definition of the word sunnah. Let me review it very quickly. The word sunnah literally means, who can help me? The word sunnah literally means way of acting, right? Okay, according to the scholars of fiqh, the jurists, the fuqaha, what does it mean? It means
What's
Recommended.
synonym. Exactly, it's recommended. Exactly. So what about the scholars of aqidah? Is synonym to
tenets of faith.
Fard.
It's obligatory to believe in.
exactly
Obligatory to
obligatory.
believe.
Excellent, excellent. And according to the scholars of usul al-fiqh, what does it mean?
That which
The
they can
proofs
derive a legal
that they've
ruling
left.
from.
Exactly. So it is restricted to 3 types only of the sunnah, which are
His sayings, actions, and tacit approvals.
excellent. So according to the scholars of hadith, those are our fellows and our brothers that we love most, and we will live with them inshallah during this course. So what do they mean by the sunnah? They mean those 6 categories, which include sayings of the Prophet, actions, tacit approvals, biography of his life, peculiar features, in addition to description of his personality, right? Okay, so this is the definition of the word sunnah. Let us actually, we are faced with another term which is commonly used by the scholars of hadith. And this term is hadith itself. What does the word hadith mean? The word hadith, my brothers and sisters, it means a story. A story. This is the literal meaning of the word hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, Allah nazzala ahsan al-hadithi kitaban. A story or a talk or a conversation. So it has been used in that term. I forgot to tell you something, my brothers. You remember what is the relationship between the literal meaning and the technical meaning of the word sunnah? Can anybody answer? We said that the word sunnah is way of acting. And the technical meaning of the sunnah is everything which is about or from the Prophet, right? So do you have any similarity between the linguistic and the technical meaning? Do you have any relationship? Can anybody trace it?
Yes, the things that the Prophet ﷺ specifically did.
Yeah, because you see, it is, you can say that sunnah is literally translated as precedent, right? General precedent, precedent of anybody, tribe, group of people, society, community, right? So the people used to have to look for precedents from others before the advent of Islam. But when the Prophet ﷺ came, the word as-sunnah, the definite article has been added to it. So what does it mean here? As-sunnah. It refers to only one person, which is
The
Prophet
precedent
the
of the Prophet.
precedent of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? So such is the case for the word al-Hadith. Hadith means the story or talk or conversation. This is the literal meaning of the word hadith. But when it is added to the definite article al-Hadith, al-Hadith, it refers to whom? To which hadith? To which story? To which conversation? To which talk? The talk of?
Prophet
The talk of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because his talk is the real model. His talk is the dominant example that the Muslims must follow. This is briefly the meaning of hadith. So hadith stands for what has been transmitted on the authority of the Prophet ﷺ, including his deeds, sayings, tacit approvals, or description of physical appearance. Somebody may ask me this question. What was the word hadith used among the Sahaba? Actually, the word hadith has been used in the Quran, but in its literal sense. But yes, Umar asked his associates not to narrate too many hadiths of the Prophet. The word hadith has been used in its technical sense during the time of the Sahaba. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu instructed people, when you write down the hadith, write it with isnad. So he means actually hadith. Utbah also had the prophetic hadith in mind when he commented that Ibn Abbas related only 2 or 3 hadith in a month. So the question, my brother, is raised. Do we have any difference between the word hadith and the word sunnah? According to the dominant use by early and late scholars, especially the latecomers, the word hadith and the word sunnah are used interchangeably. Are used what? Interchangeably. So this is the dominant use of the word sunnah and the word hadith. But sometimes in the terminology of the early scholars, they differentiate between sunnah and hadith. So if there is a difference between the two terms, we can say that hadith, pay attention to this difference, please. Hadith refers to the vehicle of the sunnah. Vehicle in the sense that hadith includes the statement, the raw materials, and the sunnah represents the legal rulings that we derive from the hadith. You understand? So the established precedent, which is deduced from the talk of the Prophet ﷺ, the act of the Prophet ﷺ, is called what? It's called sunnah. You understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying, my brothers? So the benefits that we take from the hadith are called sunnah. The practical rulings that we take from the hadith are called what? Are called sunnah. But what is hadith? Hadith is a narration that you see in front of you. The Prophet ﷺ said such and such. Let me explain for you. Like, according to on the authority of Ibn Abbas, radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, that a man at the time of the Prophet ﷺ had fell from his camel and he broke his neck. So the Prophet, while he was in a state of ihram, so the Prophet ﷺ commanded them not to cover his face, not to apply any perfume to him. And the Prophet ﷺ commanded them to shroud him in his 2 pieces of clothes. This is hadith or sunnah, my brothers and sisters? This is what?
This is sunnah.
No, this is hadith. I have narrated it to you. This is a hadith says that, okay? But we can deduce a lot of sunnah from this. On the top of them, can you deduce the sunnah? Number 1, it is prohibited to apply perfume to a person in the state of ihram. Number 2, whether he is alive or he is dead, right? Right? Number 2, it is prohibited to cover his face when he dies in a state of ihram, right? Number 3, a muhrim is shrouded in his 2 pieces of cloth, right? Number 4, can we deduce 4 and 5 from this hadith? Yes, we can deduce 4 and 5. 4 at least, we say that the cost of this shroud or this kafan that a person gets is from his money. The Prophet ﷺ, how did we deduce this? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, shroud him in his own 2 pieces of cloth. In his own. You understand what I'm saying? So we deduced from this segment of the hadith that the cost of burial and the cost of this shroud is actually taken from where? From the wealth of that person before distributing it to the heirs. You understand what I'm saying? So the list of things that I have mentioned to you are called what? Sunnah or hadith? Number 1, 2, 3, 4. They are sunnah or hadith?
Sunan.
Sunnah.
Sunnah. And the first one is called the hadith. Can I ask you a question? I need from everybody to answer this and to be aware of it. Pay attention. Do we have the term? Can we say this is a weak sunnah and this is an authentic sunnah? Can we call this?
Yes, we can,
Can we
depending
say
on the
this
grade.
is authentic sunnah and this is weak sunnah?
No, I don't think so. Sheikh, I don't think you can apply it to Sunnah, but you can apply it to Hadith.
Okay. So we can say weak sunnah?
No, you can't.
We cannot say. Why? Because once it is sunnah, it must be based on authentic hadith. You understand? You understand what I'm saying?
Another question, if I
Once
can.
once it became a sunnah, khalas. Once it became a sunnah, so it is already done. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying, brothers?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So there is a difference between hadith and sunnah in this context. We cannot say weak sunnah, but we can say weak hadith. Because once it reaches the level of a sunnah, if it reaches a sunnah, it must be based on authentic hadith. Number two, it should not be conflicted with other more authentic sunnah. Number three, the meaning of the hadith should be very clear. You understand? We are talking about different levels. Okay, so this is basically the definition of the sunnah and the definition of hadith. The second question in today's session, and I know I log in late, so forgive me if I would like actually to finish all of this lesson. Do you agree, or you want me to stop?
I agree, Sheikh.
No, Sheikh, you can continue.
Okay, barakallah feek. So about the authority of the sunnah, we need actually to have some remarks on it. Though it is related actually to, ilm usul al-fiqh when you talk about the authority of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it is very important to pay your attention, my brothers and sisters, that the scholars are unanimous to the effect that the authority of the Quran is binding on all Muslims. This is unanimous agreement. Nobody can agree on this. And all Muslims unanimously agree that the authority of the Prophet ﷺ comes second to the Quran. It's next to the Quran. And according to the belief of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, my brothers and sisters, that Muslims do not differentiate between the Quran and the Sunnah. Oh, what do you mean by differentiate? I mean that we don't make a distinction. We do not say that whatever comes from the Quran is obligatory and whatever comes from the Sunnah is recommended. No, we don't make distinction between Allah and His Messenger. We cannot say that whatever comes from the Quran, we put it in our heads, or whatever comes from the Prophet ﷺ, so it's questionable. No, we do not make a distinction between the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in this respect. We believe in both as sources of revelation that come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about the disbelievers, that they differentiate يريدون أن يفرقوا بين الله ورسوله. They would like to make a distinction between Allah and His Messenger. ويقولون نؤمن ببعض ونكفر ببعض. They say we believe in some and we disbelieve in some. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala condemned that behavior. So you see the emergence of some sects like Al-Quraniyun, you heard about them, and they have so many misconceptions that we may discuss later, inshallah. So the authority of the Prophet ﷺ, which we must confirm, it's not derived from the community's acceptance of the Prophet as a person of authority, but his authority has been mandated by the text of the Quran. The Quran itself, the Quran has given us clear, decisive indications and decisive rules to follow the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam sunnah. There is the Quran talked about total obedience to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ. So it is something which is very general and very specific. And when you remember when Imam Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu, rahimahullah, when a man came to him and he said, "Ya Imam, I would like to seek your permission to make my ihram from Medina before reaching Dhul Hulayfa." You know, the people of Medina, we travel from Medina to Dhul Hulayfa, and Dhul Hulayfa is the way between Mecca and, it's close to Medina, but it's in the way between Mecca and Medina. So we start our ihram in Dhul Hulayfa because this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. This man wants to take more reward. So he said, actually, I want to actually start my ihram ahead of time. And so I would like to make it from Medina, not when I reach Dhul Hulayfa. So what does Imam Malik say to him? What did he say to him? He said, "Akhsha alayka al-fitna." I'm afraid that you may be trialed in your religion. And he said, "Yeah, Imam, I only crave after doing something good. And he says, no, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, فَلْيَحْذَرِ الَّذِينَ يُخَالِفُونَ عَنْ أَمْرِهِ أَن تُصِيبَهُمْ فِتْنَةٌ أَوْ يُصِيبَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Beware those who disobey his orders, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's orders, that a severe punishment may afflict them. So it is very important to understand that the authority of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you remember in the story of Abu Bakr and Umar, when Abu Bakr said to Umar, "Ilzam gharzahu," put your feet in exactly where he put his feet, which means that strictly follow him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Umar wanted actually to talk about the Sulh al-Hudaybiyah and these issues, so what Abu Bakr, he gave him the key of success, and he says to him, follow his footsteps. Follow his footsteps. This is the Jannah. This is the way of success, and this is a straight path. So the authority of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ is an expounder. Is the job of the Messenger ﷺ is the expounder of this legislation, which was revealed to us. And according to some scholars, the Prophet ﷺ is legislator in the sense that he has the authority even of legislating certain things, but it is a controversial issue. So the model behavior of the Prophet ﷺ is binding on the Muslim community. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرَ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. This is briefly, my brothers, what I wanted actually to just share with you in this introductory lesson, defining the concept of Hadith and Sunnah. In the coming session, inshallah, I'm going to discuss with you the history of Mustalah al-Hadith, or the preservation of the Sunnah at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, how the Sahaba of the Messenger ﷺ received the Sunnah of the Prophet, and how did they handle this mission and this task to the succeeding generations who carried the Sunnah to us intact, preserved, رضي الله تعالى عنهم ورضوا. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Do you have any questions or any inquiries, my brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
Yes,
Sheikh. Have explained.
Assalamu alaikum.
Let's go ahead. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Sheikh, I had a question. So you spoke about how Hadith and Sunnah actually don't have they're interchangeable today, but then you went on to show how sometimes it doesn't really make sense to use them interchangeably. So the question is this a historical difference, or still today is there differentiation between Hadith and Sunnah?
This is, my brother, it has two aspects. Number one, in early scholars, they used to differentiate between Hadith and Sunnah. They used to differentiate between Hadith and Sunnah. Number two is that those terms, if used even nowadays, they are like, we have a group of terms in our in the sciences of Islam, and those terms, when you find those two terms, those pairs in the same text, so you have to say that they have different meanings. You remember Islam and Iman. So if Islam and Iman are used in the same context, in the same passage, so they must have two different meanings, right? Islam refers to the physical aspect and Iman to the inward actions, right? But if they are used in different contexts, we use the word Islam interchangeably with Iman, right? Yeah, we interchangeably. You say this is a mu'min or this is a Muslim. You understand what I'm saying? Such is the case for Hadith and Sunnah. So when we use the two terms in the same text, in the same context, they have different meanings. But if they are used in different contexts, so we can use them interchangeably. There is no problem about it. What why did I emphasize this issue? Why did I explain it for you? Because there is a trend among Western scholars, for example, I know, and this is among some Muslims, that they say that the word Sunnah does not refer to what is restricted to the actions and sayings of the Prophet, but it represents the precedent of the community as a whole. And the concept of the Sunnah in its technical sense was not actually well crystallized in the minds and in the vision of the Muslims, even after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. But this is wrong. The word Sunnah and the word Hadith has been used to refer to the precedent of the Prophet ﷺ, not to refer to the community as a whole, because the community doesn't have the power or the authority to legislate something or to say something that's halal and haram. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly.
Well, yeah.
Sheikh, I had a question regarding the definition.
Yes.
So I was reading the Hadith terminology and classification book. It says that Sunnah stands for Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, statements and deeds. It also includes acts that were carried out by others of which he tacitly approved. I felt like that was very close to the definition of the Usuliyin. Is that the case, or?
Can you say it again, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the definition given in the Hadith terminology and classification book for Sunnah, I'm quoting here, it says, Sunnah stands for Prophet Muhammad's statements and deeds. It also includes acts that were carried out by others of which he tacitly approved. So I felt that was close to the definition of the Usuliyin. Is that the case, or is that different, would you say?
This is the case of the Usuliyin, and this is the definition of the Usuliyin. It's not the definition of the Muhaddithin, or the traditions, the scholars of Hadith.
Okay. So the book was actually expanding on the definition of Usuliyin in this case.
Yes, exactly. This is
okay. Okay, and I
but
had one more.
The definition of the traditions of the scholars of Hadith is wider, because it includes, as I mentioned to you, the Shama'il and the Khasa'is, and includes even the Sirah, the biography of the Prophet ﷺ. So Sirat ibn Hisham and Sirat ibn Ishaq, and those are included as a part of the Hadith literature. Even, when even Imam al-Bukhari himself, he added, he added the biography, a chapter on the biography of the Prophet ﷺ in his Sahih, the Maghazi of the Prophet ﷺ.
No, and I had one more question regarding the lexical definition for Sunnah. So in terms of Sunnah as as setting a precedence in terms of the definition, did the Arabs of pre-Islam, as you said, they used Sunnah, in terms of precedence, did they use that only in honorable context, or would they use it interchangeably in different contexts?
They used it for only one sense, which is a way of acting, a precedent, whether it is evil or it is good, whether it is bad or evil.
Okay, Jazakallah khair.
So they use it in a general sense, but after Islam, it was restricted only to what is good and only what is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ. That's why it took the point as Sunnah, or the definite article.
Jazakallah khair.
Do you like to take just 3 minutes break and then return back to Umdat al-Ahkam, my brothers and sisters?
Yes, please. Jazakallah khair.
Inshallah, Sheikh.
We have Brother Muhammad with us. Just 3 minutes, and we'll upload the file, and then return back. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Assalam.
Everybody can hear the voice, inshallah.
Yes, it's perfect, inshallah. Sheikh, are you managing to see all of the messages from the chats?
What do you say?
Can you see the messages from the chat box? Have you been able to see them all?
Yes, I see. Yes, I see people. Yeah, the participants, can see them all now.
Yes, and can you see the messages that they send through?
The last one. Yes, when they send a message, I see it.
Okay,
It's like chats. So last message is yes, right?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Let me share the desktop. Next time, inshallah, I will upload the file inside so I will know how to get it through the tablets. So you can't see the word file, right? Everybody
Yes,
can see
Sheikh.
it, inshallah?
Yes, Shaykhana.
Yes.
Inshallah. Do you like us to start now, inshallah?
Yes, inshallah.
Yes, please, Sheikh.
Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين ورحمة الله للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. All the praise and all the glory is due to Allah, and I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his last prophet and messenger. May the blessings and peace of Allah be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and those who followed his path up to the day of judgment. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this first session on Umdat al-Ahkam. In today's session, I will try to be, I will elaborate the methodology and the importance of the course that we are teaching very briefly, and then we will start with the first hadith, inshallah. It is very important when we study Islam or when we study fiqh that we study three basic sciences. Number one, ilm al-fiqh itself, the Islamic law or Islamic jurisprudence. Number two, we study usul al-fiqh, which basically deals with the methodology of how to use a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in eliciting and deriving legal rulings. Number three is ilm ahadith al-ahkam, or the legal traditions. And in this rubric, or in this genre, we basically discuss the ahadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which the scholars based their opinions on. So this science is basically on the legal traditions. It doesn't talk about ahadith on softening the hearts or biographical traditions, etc. It is restricted basically to the ahadith on legal matters. So it's called the ilm hadith al-ahkam. And it is very necessary for everybody to, when you study fiqh, when you study Islam, that we study those ahadith basically. So we are going to study the primary books on this field. We have three important and very well-known books. The most famous book is Umdat al-Ahkam. Umdat al-Ahkam is a book which was written by Imam Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi. So Umdat al-Ahkam is just a book of hadith, as you will see, and I'm going to upload it inshallah on the Dropbox. So Umdat al-Ahkam is a book which consists of 416 ahadith approximately. All of those ahadith are arranged according to the books of fiqh. So it starts with purification, prayers, fasting, zakat, rituals, broader sense, and then transactions, and then it talks about penalties, crimes and penalties, and finally it talks about jurisdiction. So it only talks about ahadith or compiles ahadith. The significance of Umdat al-Ahkam that we are going to study is that it relied intensively, primarily on Bukhari and Muslim alone. So the ahadith, all the ahadith include Umdat al-Ahkam, they are authentic. And they are the most authentic books because the massive majority of those ahadith have been agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim, which means both Imam Bukhari and Muslim have already compiled those ahadith. What Imam Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi did is that he classified those ahadith and extracted them from Bukhari and Muslim and set them under titles. And those titles are classified according to the book of hadith. What we are going to do is that we will study, inshallah, during this semester, almost 100 ahadith. Alhamdulillah, I could, by the help of Allah and His support, write a commentary on, right now, almost 200 ahadith of the book, half of the book. And I'm in the process, inshallah, of finishing it all. So our plan is to start with 100 ahadith and just to become in this semester. And those ahadith, we will try tediously, inshallah, to memorize them in Arabic and also to know their meanings in English and to understand how we can derive the legal ruling from the respective source. So the basic goal of this course, my brothers and sisters, is not memorization. Memorization would actually help you to recall the adillah, the proofs which are necessary in your study of fiqh. But the primary goal is to develop skill and talent in your own selves, how to look at the texts of a hadith and how to understand the meaning of the hadith, how to derive the legal ruling of the hadith, how the scholars reflected to the meanings of this hadith, how the scholars try to maximize the benefit by getting all possible meanings from each single phrase and word which is included in the text of this hadith. This is the basic goal. This is the primary goal of our course, is to train you on how to derive, to tell you how the scholars reflected to the text of this hadith by deriving all what is possible. We are going, inshallah, to study, as I mentioned to you, from 5 to 7 ahadith per week. I know that it is something which is ambitious, and I think today we will not be able to do this, but we'll try, inshallah, we'll do our best. And it will basically also rely on your study at home, because I'm going to give you handouts of those ahadith that I made the commentary. I ask every one of you, inshallah, to read the text intensively and to help in re-editing and proofreading the text in English, because it will be a textbook in the future, inshallah, for you and for the seekers of knowledge. We, alhamdulillah, conducted many editorial work of this book in English, and for many native speakers. Some of my students, they have already delved deep in actually proofreading, but still, if there are some ideas are ambiguous and some ideas are not clear, especially for the English speaking people and students and seekers of knowledge. So I was actually recommending everybody. I have already mentioned that in the, I have already mentioned this in the, you see, in the present, in the course description. You are brother Ihsan. He is saying, or sister Ihsan, I'm sorry if I confused about the name. Brother Ihsan, alhamdulillah. So it is actually we are required to memorize the text of the hadith, and only the first narrator, the name of the Sahabi of the Prophet ﷺ. My brothers, by doing this, it will be very helpful for you. And believe me, after memorization, you will understand that you will get more about Arabic language also, because I recommend everybody to memorize the vocabulary first, to know the vocabulary, to make analysis of the hadith. So it will be actually a lesson in Arabic and getting more vocabulary. And at the same time, when you memorize it, inshallah, it will be more beneficial for everybody. Okay? So this is my point. We will, I made the editorial, or what you can call proofreading. It's a bonus grade for everybody. I set up actually the grading system, which relies on attendance and on also it depends on the memorization attendance, and also on the final exam, inshallah. Anybody have any questions or inquiries? I tried to make it very simple for you, but if you have any room for questions or before actually starting this course, are most welcome, inshallah. Will you be expounding on ikhtilaf of the different madhahib within the hadith? What do you expect? Salman Ahmed is asking this question. Adib Shah, so you would like actually to sharh. Okay, this is what I made actually. I designed this book basically for the seekers of knowledge. And when some brothers saw it, they said that it is not for the laymen, and it is difficult because actually you are making it difficult. I said, subhanallah, we are targeting actually the seekers of knowledge with this commentary, basically because this is a category of people that may benefit, inshallah, from this course or this book. And this is what I reflected in this book, inshallah. So you will find for sure the disagreements among scholars. What is more important is not to just get these disagreements, but the point is, my brothers and sisters, is to put this or to know why the scholars have already disagreed. You should actually concentrate on the reasons the scholars had to base their opinions. This is very important because I'm not, and another point which is very important here, that I don't prefer actually to prefer one view over the other. I will, in some certain cases, give you the preferred opinion. But you understand what I'm saying? I would like you, the main reason of this course is to study the evidence, to go deeper into how the scholars use this evidence. So it will make us, yes, there are 3 books on Ilm al-Mustalah al-Hadith, yes, which I mentioned. The first book is actually Umdat al-Ahkam. The second book is Ya Abu Abdullah, Ya Abu Abdullah, it is Umdat al-Ahkam. And also the second is a book which was written by Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. Anybody knows it? It's called, anybody knows it? The second book which was written, it's Bulugh al-Maram. Exactly, it's Bulugh al-Maram. And the third book was written by the grandfather of Ibn Taymiyyah. It's called Ibn Taymiyyah al-Jadd. Ibn Taymiyyah, the grandfather. Or, Ibn Taymiyyah al-Jadd, he wrote al-Muntaqa, the book which is called al-Muntaqa. And later al-Muntaqa was commented by Imam al-Shawkani in his well-known Nail al-Awtar, Sharh Muntaqa al-Akhbar. So these are the 3 grades of Ahkam Ahadith, as you see. So Umdat al-Ahkam is the first book that we will go through. And my teaching, inshallah, I did not prepare a PowerPoint presentation, but I have already given, subhanallah, I have written, and I will share with you, inshallah, the hadith and with their commentaries. I will also share with you my translation of the whole book, the translation of all ahadith, so it would be accessible for you on your tablets or on your cell phone, to read and to memorize when you are available, inshallah. So I have it. It's only Arabic, English. So I will share it also with you, inshallah. It is pending publication, so it is for your own personal use, because it's not yet ready for publication, either the whole ahadith or even the commentary. The methodology that we are going to do, inshallah, is that we will have at our session, we will conduct it in the form of the shuyukh. that I received from my teachers in Haram, in the Prophet's Masjid, and of the scholars that I received ijazas. I forgot actually to tell you that at the end of this course, inshallah, at the end of the fourth course of Umdat al-Ahkam, when we finish it all, I'm going, inshallah, to grant you ijaza in Umdat al-Ahkam, because I received it from many of my shuyukh here in Medina, alhamdulillah. So I'm going, inshallah, to grant you the ijaza when we finish the whole book by the mercy and help and support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My brothers and sisters, inshallah, we will start by inviting a brother to read the Arabic text of the hadith for us, another brother to read the English text of the hadith for us, and afterwards we will go through, for example, the narrator, and then the brother in English will read, this subtitle in number. You see, let me actually also explain for you the commentary that I did. This commentary includes as follows. This is the first hadith of Umar ibn al-Khattab on intentions. This is actions are by intention. So I provide a title for this hadith. And then I give the Arabic text of the hadith. Afterwards, I add the English text of the hadith. Afterwards, I focus on certain vocabulary of the hadith. You see here, in this vocabulary, focus on linguistic analysis of certain words. It doesn't include each single word, but it focuses on certain words. Afterwards, number 5, focus on the narrator of this hadith. We give a short biography on the narrator of this hadith. Number 6, we delve into the hadith jurisprudence. By hadith jurisprudence, we sort the hadith into segments. So we start with the first sentence, and then we get all the legal rulings derived from this segment. So when we say, verily all actions are but by divine intentions, or by driven intentions, so I get every single legal ruling that may be derived from this hadith, from this segment, and then we move to the next segment in this format. This is what I have, inshallah. So my brothers and sisters, if I hope that you are familiar with the whole system, and we're familiar with also the commentary that I prepared, inshallah. Do you have any further questions, please? Because I don't like to start without everybody being comfortable, and everybody is enthusiastic also, and have this self-motivation to start the journey with the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So everybody is, do you have any further questions or any inquiries? Okay. Let us, inshallah, start with this hadith. So I need one brother to read the text in Arabic and another brother to read the text in English.
Sheikh, I could read.
And afterwards, yes, Brother Muhammad?
Usama here, Sheikh.
Yes, Brother Usama. Yes, go ahead, Ya Sheikh Usama, inshallah. Bismillah.
Bismillah. عن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال: سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: إنما الأعمال بالنيات، وفي رواية بالنية، وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى، فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله، ومن كانت هجرته إلى دنيا يصيبها أو امرأة يتزوجها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه.
نعم. The English translation.
I can read the next one, Sheikh.
Read for us. Sure.
On the authority of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, who said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam say, certainly all actions are only determined by intentions, and certainly every man shall only have that which he intended. Thus he whose migration was to Allah and his Messenger, then his migration was to Allah and his Messenger. And he whose migration was to achieve some worldly benefit, or to take a woman in marriage, his migration was to that which he migrated.
Barakallahu fikum. This is the first hadith in Umdat al-Ahkam. Let me focus on just the vocabulary, and then I move to the narrator of the hadith. The word innama, it is composed of two words, inna and ma. Inna means it is for emphasis or for showing certainty. And ma means only. So it is this expression in Arabic is called uslubu hasrin. Uslubu hasr means that it is, which may be translated as certainly only, which means exclusiveness. You chose exclusiveness, as if you say certainly actions are not regarded as actions except if they have, or only when they have intentions. So this is a literal translation of this expression. Al-a'mal, it is a plural for the word amal, which means action. And this action may be an action of the tongue, like a speech. It may be an action of the a limb of the body, or it may be an action of the heart also, because all of those things need intentions. And in the word the binniyat, ba is, we are going to explain that right now, but anyhow, aniyat means intentions, and the word the hijrah here refers to the migration. And in the context of this hadith, it refers to the Prophet's migration from Mecca to Medina, which was obligatory at the time of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Dunya means worldly life. The word yusibuha, it is a verb which has a pronoun, which means yusibuha means to achieve or to get. فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. فهجرته means his migration. إلى ما هاجر إليه means was to that which he migrated. This hadith, my brothers and sisters, have been narrated by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And he is the second caliph of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and the first one to be called Amirul Mu'mineen. And he is buried next to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam along with Abu Bakr. And he was one of the most powerful and influential Muslim caliphs in history. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam talked about Umar ibn al-Khattab especially in two occasions. The first one is when the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "O Allah, guide one of the two Umars to Islam." And he was meaning Umar ibn al-Khattab or Amr ibn Hisham, because both of them were very influential. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted the dua of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam of making Umar a Muslim. The other occasion is when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the authentic hadith that ما من أمة إلا فيها محدثون. Any nation before you that had some muhaddathun, and if there is only one muhaddith in this ummah, he would definitely be Umar. He would definitely be Umar. Imam Ibn Hajar talked about the word muhaddathun, and he said it is a person who receives an inspiration from the angels, who is inspired by the angels, or he is a person that the truth flows from his tongue while he doesn't know. This is the case of Umar ibn al-Khattab. He spoke the truth, decisive truth. That's why he was called al-Faruq, because he was like a criterion between the truth and falsehood. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu died when he was stabbed by the Majusi slave Abu Lulu'a, as you know in Medina. Let us now move to some of the legal rulings that may be deduced from this hadith. The brother, inshallah, who read the English text, he can read just the subtitle after hadith jurisprudence. So I will try, inshallah, to comment on it in detail, and then when I move, we will move ahead to read the next segment of the hadith. Now.
Okay, sure. on the authority of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, who said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam saying, this is the only authentic
This
version of...
just reading the title, inshallah, the subtitle. This hadith, my brothers and sisters, has been transmitted only by Umar ibn al-Khattab. What does it mean? That the only companion who received this hadith from Umar ibn al-Khattab, from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was Umar ibn al-Khattab. So according to the terminology of hadith, we call this hadith gharib. Gharib is the hadith which was transmitted by only one reporter in any of its paths of transmission or in any of its generations. This hadith, my brothers, have been also reported by one single person from Umar ibn al-Khattab by the name of Alqama ibn Waqqas al-Laythi. Alqama ibn Waqqas al-Laythi. And later it was received by only one person from Alqama, and his name is Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Taymi. Most of the people, they thought that this hadith, the hadith about intentions, has been reported by so many companions and so many followers of the Prophet ﷺ, but this is not true. This hadith has been reported by only Umar ibn al-Khattab, and later it was reported by only one single person. So this hadith is called the gharib. Being gharib doesn't necessarily mean, my brothers, that if the hadith is gharib, it doesn't necessarily mean that this hadith is not authentic, because the classification of hadith into gharib and mashhur, this is according to the number of the reporters in its chain of transmissions. But this classification overlaps of whether this hadith is authentic or not. The point that I wanted to convey in this hadith, you know, this hadith has been transmitted by the Prophet ﷺ on his mimbar. And when Umar ibn al-Khattab transmitted this hadith, he transmitted this hadith also on mimbar, but only one person who transmitted it. And it has been circulated afterwards to become one of the most authentic hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The legal ruling that we can derive from this sentence is that even if this hadith has been reported by only one person, so we technically call this hadith ahad or mutawatir. We can answer. We call this hadith is ahad or mutawatir. Ahad. Why? Because the mutawatir is a hadith which has been transmitted by a large number of people in each stage of its transmission, to the extent that it is impossible for this great number of people to collide or to collaborate to fabricate a lie. This is not like this. It has been transmitted by only one. So the first legal ruling, my brothers and sisters, that we derive from this hadith, it is a proof for the principle of acting upon legal rulings derived from ahad hadith. This is a proof that we act upon the ahad hadith. You know, there is a controversy among some people that they believe that ahad hadith cannot be relied on as a source in aqidah. But according to the authentic opinion and the massive majority of all Muslim scholars, is that hadith al-ahad is a source of aqidah, and it is a source of sharia also. Why? On which point did we base our opinion? We based our opinion on numerous examples. The Prophet ﷺ sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal to Yemen, and the Prophet ﷺ told him, according to the authentic hadith, inform them about the testimony of faith. So if they believe that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his last prophet and messenger, inform them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made obligatory on them 5 daily prayers. If they believe in it and act upon it, tell them that Allah has prescribed a share in their wealth to be taken from the wealthy to be given to the poor, etc. So the Prophet ﷺ delegated Mu'adh to deliver the concepts of belief to the people of Yemen, and he was only one person. The Messenger ﷺ sent his letters and messages to the monarchs and rulers throughout the whole world, and he used to send just only one person with each message. He sent only one messenger, and he was ahad. And also there were numerous examples in the practice of the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ. You remember when the grandmother came to the Messenger to Abu Bakr Siddiq seeking her share of inheritance, and they didn't find anything in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when Al-Mughira came and he delivered to Abu Bakr Siddiq just only one piece of information which he received from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Bakr submitted to this hadith and he acted accordingly. My brothers and sisters, believing in the Ahad hadith has been established by Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and we do not differentiate as long as this Ahad hadith has been transmitted to us in an authentic path of transmission. So as long as it is authentic, it is a source of Sharia and it is a source of Aqidah. Somebody may ask me, so why we only have a path of transmission which remain? We are supposed actually to have so numerous people who heard it from the Prophet ﷺ on the minbar. Or we are supposed to have numerous followers who received it from Umar ibn al-Khattab. Yes, it is right, you are correct. But when we had this hadith remained in the anthologies of hadith, we make sure that this hadith has been transmitted in the academic circles of hadith. That's why it was recorded and registered. It doesn't prelude the possibility that this same hadith has been circulated orally among other Sahaba and other people. But we didn't receive these chains of transmissions basically because we received only the transmitted recorded documents. And we didn't have access to all different documents in all stages of history of Muslims. So we had it because it was the only recorded copy which remained in the published sources and the manuscripts. Yes. Yes, go ahead to the next title.
Yep. Verily all actions but driven intentions.
So the Prophet, according to this statement that the Prophet ﷺ expressed, it is expressed, as I mentioned to you, same way of uslub al-hasr. Uslub al-hasr means its exclusiveness. So the Prophet ﷺ said, verily all actions are but driven intentions, which means that an action is not regarded as a legal action except if it has an intention. This is the literal meaning of this statement. So what does it mean? In other words, it means that every action must have an intention. Every action must have an intention. So every action must have an intention behind it. Every deed which is performed by a rational human being must have an intention, a driving intention behind it. The Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. So what is the letter, the preposition before النِّيَّات? It is B النِّيَّات. So the preposition is called ba, right? What is the meaning of ba in Arabic language, my brothers and sisters?
With or by?
Who can't? It's by, okay? The ba has two basic meanings in Arabic language. If you say, for example, the جاء محمد بالسيارة. He came by bus, which means that if there is no bus, so Muhammad wouldn't have reached it. So the reason of his coming was actually the bus, right? So that's why we use the ba. So ba here is showing the cause, the position. So this is the first meaning of the ba. It shows position. So when we say إنما الأعمال بالنيات, which means that there is no action without a driving intention which represents the cause of this action. Understand? The second meaning, when we say جاء محمد بإبراهيم, جاء محمد بإبراهيم, Muhammad came by or with. What does it mean? With Ibrahim, right? So the word ba in the second meaning is ba is called for showing companionship or to accompany something. So the word ba in this context, in this phrase, may be interpreted to have those two meanings. It may be interpreted to mean actions are but are caused by driving intentions. Actions are being driven by intentions. So the cause of actions is, what is the cause behind an action? Is the intention, right? Or it may mean that action comes with the intention, because the ba, as I mentioned to you, may be translated as for or by, or it may be translated as with. So in those two meanings, we have two different meanings. So if we believe that the ba in this context means for or by, it means that intention is a constituent element of any action. What it is rukn. What does it mean if it is rukn? If you don't have an intention, so the whole action is invalid. You understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? And if it is rukn, so the intention must come before the action. If it is rukn, if it is a constituent element, so it must come before the action. So the intention must precede the action. Number two, if we regard the ba as to indicate companionship or to be interpreted as with, so in this case, we believe that the condition is the intention is just a condition, is just a condition. So the scholar said that intention is regarded as a rukn, as also as a condition of the act. How do we explain it? We mean that any act must be preceded by an intention, and this intention must accompany that act throughout it. So throughout the whole act, when you are making prayer, you maintain the intention that you have. So if you turn your intention away by saying, no, I'm no longer making prayers, I'm just making exercise, so in this case, your prayer is invalid. So the scholars concluded that intention is a rukn and a condition at the same time. You understand this? It is a rukn and a condition at the same time. The scholars also concluded that the intention is a prerequisite for all pure acts of worship. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, like prayers and Hajj. So any act must have an intention. If a person have a wudu, it must have the prerequisite of wudu is intention. So what is the job, what is the basic function, the basic job of an intention? The scholar said that intention has three basic jobs. Number one, intention can discriminate a habit from an act of worship. Because when a person makes exercise, but he intends by doing these certain motions that they are prayers, he changed the habit from being a habit to a practice. This is the first job of an intention, to discriminate between a habit and an act of worship, an act of devotion. Number two, the second job of intention is to show us the type of act of worship whether you are making fasting or you are making prayers or you are making hajj, etc. Number 3, you are setting up the grade of this ibadah. Some of the ibadats are made in congregation, in jama'ah, and some of them are obligatory, some of them are supererogatory, etc. You understand what I'm saying? So the main primary causes of an intention are, number 1, is to discriminate an act of worship from an act, from ibadah, from a habit. Number 2 is to show the type of this act of worship. And number 3, it is to show the grade of this ibadah. So I'm asking you a question. When you are making Asr prayer or Maghrib prayer right now in Sydney, or Isha prayer, you already finished, alhamdulillah, you already finished your Isha. So if you are making it, what are the 3 things that you have to put in your heart when you are making intention? Question is for everybody, based on what we explained. You hear me, brothers, sisters?
You need to have the intention. You need to you need to be you need to have the intention to pray first of all.
Excellent. Number 2.
You have to specify which prayer, Maghrib or Isha, or
Which
prayer you pray.
Excellent, right? Right. Number 3. Whether it is obligatory or recommended, right? Or if it is actually, if it is congregational, or it's by yourself. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah. So these are the basic jobs. This is the basic job of an intention. Another point on this, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, actions. A question is raised here. Is it necessary to be an action to have an intention? Like, for example, if I'm abandoning something, abandonment of something, does an abandonment of something is regarded an action? Can anybody answer? Like, for example, person saw some haram stuff in front of him, so he lowered his gaze, and then he said astaghfirullah, and then he passed away.
Yes.
He must abandon for the sake of Allah.
Yes, if he's making it for the sake of Allah, even the abandonment of certain things are technically called actions, because he has already taken a proactive action by preventing himself from doing the haram, right? So this is very important. So even if it is, the hadith called them actions, but they are included, even the abandonments are included in the meaning of this hadith. Intentions are very important, my brothers and sisters, because they change, as I mentioned to you, habits into acts of worship. And a person can change all of his life into ibadah. As the Prophet ﷺ said, even a bite that you put in the mouth of your wife is an act of charity. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the best charity that you can give in your life is a charity that you give to your wife or to your family. And then the Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith,
verily every man shall have but that which he intended.
if we contemplate on the meaning of this phrase, it means a person's intention determines the reward for the deed, even if the result of the deed is not what the person desired. The Prophet ﷺ based the reward on the action or in the result. The Prophet ﷺ said, every man shall have but that which he intended. He didn't say, verily every man shall have but that which he acted. So it means a person's intention is the determiner for the reward of that person. This is further confirmed by the authentic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he said, For you, when you know there is the story of a man who has given charity to his son. So the father came to the Prophet ﷺ and said that my zakah is not accepted because I just gave it to my son. So the Prophet ﷺ said, for you is what you intended. And he said to the son, for you is what you took. So the Prophet ﷺ referred to that person that he was rewarded according to his intention. There is another hadith of the Messenger which he said, وإن يعني يدرك الإنسان بعمله ما بنيته ما لا يدركه بعمله. Intentions go beyond actions, which means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward his slaves according to their intentions, even if the intended deeds are not realized or achieved. The Prophet ﷺ said, in Medina there are people left behind. We do not pass through any ravine or valley except that they are with us. They have been kept behind due to valid reasons or for valid excuses. So if a person intends to do an act seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it was mixed with some other intentions, according to the correct view, that all of his action will be actually null and void. Because that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى. So if a person intends an act to be for the sake of showing off, for the sake of being seen by others, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will invalidate his act, because based on his intention he didn't crave after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is according to the literal meaning of this hadith. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was asked about different categories of people who fought in the cause of Allah, one which actually fought because he would like to be seen by others, another to be actually seen as a courageous person, and a third who actually fought for the sake of tribalism and being enthusiastic about defending himself and his tribe. So the Prophet ﷺ said, all of them are held martyrs if they originally intend to fight so that the word of Allah is the highest. So this is based on their intentions. So according to every intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward the person. Also, according to this phrase, every man will have what he has intended, which he intended. Means that as much a person can compile many intentions in every single act, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward him for this. And the scholars have actually differentiated between two types of acts. There are certain acts which may be actually shared by other people, by other, they may have one intention for more than one intention for the same act. Like for example, when you are making making prayers when you enter the masjid, you can put in your intention that you are making those 2 rak'ats as 2 rak'ats for tawbah, which you follow the practice of making wudu. Or you can, and also you can combine with this intention the intention of saluting the masjid, greeting the masjid. When you first enter the masjid, you start with your prayers. And you can also make them as 2 rak'ats of ad-duha prayer, for example. So all of those can be compiled in the same intention. These certain acts actually they can share the same act, different intentions for the same act. But there are certain actions that cannot have the same. There are certain actions which cannot be done for one intention. Like for example, if you say, I'm going to pray those 4 rak'ats as sunnah and as fard at the same time, or I'm making up some days that I missed from Ramadan, and at the same time those same 4 days are actually a part of the 6 days that the Prophet ﷺ recommended us to fast after the month of Ramadan, which are the 6 of Shawwal, the 6 days of Shawwal. Why? Because there are certain acts of worship which can have same intentions and others do not accept this concept. Also, we understand from this phrase that validation and invalidation for deeds primarily relies on driving intention behind those deeds. So if the intentions are valid, the act will be valid. And if the intentions are not valid, the act itself will not be valid. This hadith, my brothers, also focuses on another point, which demonstrates this hadith also demonstrates a very important issue, that a Muslim must have knowledge before acting. A person must have the intention to do an act which is proper, or at least permissible. This is the benefit of knowledge, my brothers and sisters. As much a person acquires knowledge, he can acquire more intentions, more and more intentions. And this is the benefit of this hadith and the discussion. My brothers and sisters, I think I will stop at this point, inshallah, in today's session. It's better because basically I don't like to take much of your time, so that from the next session, inshallah, we will have more, inshallah, time to take more ahadith, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then I will also share with you the materials that you can read even ahead of time before coming. So I don't like to go beyond the schedule that you had, because I know some of you might have some commitments, so I don't like to keep you, and some of you, they have work. So I will stop at this point today on Umdat al-Ahkam, hoping, inshallah, in the next session we will go further, inshallah, and taking more than 7 hadiths, inshallah. Do you have any further questions or any questions? I don't like to put much burden on you, inshallah. There are certain comments, I think, or questions that I can go through very quickly. You have mentioned a few times the phrase حول أهل السنة والجماعة. So what is the meaning? You mean that what is أهل السنة والجماعة? أهل السنة والجماعة, it is a term which refers to the people who adhered to the principles of Islam as practiced by the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ in the first 3 generations, which is they are called as-Salaf as-Salih. As-Salaf as-Salih. So this term briefly means the people who adhere to the primary sources of. They are the people who adhere to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ as being understood by the first 3 generations. There are other qualities and other attributes of this that I can share with you, inshallah. I had a course on fiqh al-iman that I can share with you, inshallah, and you can review the qualities of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. If there is a significant difference between narration, Imam al-Nawawi mentioned in 40 and the rewarding of imra'atin yankiha, yes, exactly. No, because actually Imam Bukhari himself, he reported this hadith in 6 different occasions in his Sahih. So sometimes he used different wordings of the same hadith. So Imam al-Nawawi chose one wording of those 6 wordings. The first hadith, it is mentioned first time in the first hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, but even it has been reported in 6 other occasions. Can you just clearly explain? Okay, I didn't get the. Are there any Arabic shuruh you would recommend? I would recommend actually Taysir al-Allam in a commentary of Umdat al-Ahkam. All ahadith are classified as ahad or mutawatir. Yes, this is the basic classification. We will study it, inshallah, in hadith terminology. So all the ahadith are either ahad or mutawatir. The massive majority of ahadith are ahad. This is the opinion that Abdullah ibn Jahsh was the first to be considered Amir al-Mu'mineen. No, it is actually the first one to be. Abdullah ibn Jahsh actually died as a disbeliever, as you know, he apostated Islam. Do you know that? When he traveled to Abyssinia, so as a commander of the faithful, This first title was not given even to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. It was given, Abu Bakr was called the Khalifatu Rasulillah, the successor of the Prophet, but Amir al-Mu'mineen was given to Umar al-Khattab. In what ways علم الحديث الأحكام differ on أصول الفقه? علم أحاديث الأحكام, it deals with the raw materials. It deals only with ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and it deals on how to deduce the rulings from them. Usul al-Fiqh, it deals with the Quran, Hadith, and different sources and different proofs. So Hadith al-Ahkam is restricted to only the Ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ as one of the proofs of fiqh. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Any further questions or any inquiries, my brothers and sisters?
Sheikh, I had a question.
Yes.
Sheikh, you mentioned that for some of the actions of ibadah, you can combine different intentions. For example, the Tahta Masjid and the Duha prayer, for example. But certain actions you can't. Sheikh, how do you determine which actions or which ibadat you can combine the intentions and which ibadat you can't? Is it like a way to determine that?
Naam, Jazakallah khairan. It's a good question. Basically, the main criterion of this, the general rule about it, and for sure this rule has some exceptions, which is if the act itself, if the act is intended for itself, it is intended for itself, or it is intended for a purpose. So, for example, if the act is intended for a purpose, like for example, when we enter the masjid, we are supposed, the first thing to do is to start our entrance of the masjid by saluting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or by making raka'at, by making prayers, right? So if you make those, so the main objective of this is to salute the masjid by entering the masjid. The first thing to do is to enter the masjid. So if you do it through 2 raka'at, if you do it through obligatory prayers, as long as it is a prayer, so it is, this intention is achieved. You why? Because the act itself is not intended for a specific thing. But when it is intended for itself specifically, you cannot share other thing with it. Like for example, this is a obligatory prayer, this is Asr prayer. Can you combine with this Asr prayer Maghrib prayer also, or Isha prayer? No, you cannot, because it is intended to fulfill a duty on you, which is fulfilling 4 rak'ats at that time, which is called dhuhr. You understand what I'm saying? Such is the case for fasting. If you are fasting, supererogatory fasting, like for example, you do regularly each Monday and Thursday. It happens that this Monday and Thursday comes along with, for example, the 3 days that a person can observe fasting throughout the whole month. Can we get the 2 intentions? Yes, we can get the 2 intentions, because there is no conflict in this case. You understand what I'm saying? And for this general rule, we have some exceptions here and there. It is related to legal maxims, so if we need to reach a decisive rule about it, we have to go into much details about it. But the basic conclusion about it, if the act of worship is intended for a certain goal so we cannot share it with others. But if it is possible to share the same goal with it, it's possible. Deeds are by intention is.
Sheikh, I had a question. You mentioned that there was a group of people that didn't consider Hadith as a source of legislation. Can you expand on who that group was? Were they from Ahl Sunnah, and what was their reasoning for taking such a stance?
Those people who rejected actually al-Hadith al-Ahad, the consensus of the Muslim jurists is actually that the massive majority of the Muslim scholars, they accept the Hadith al-Ahad in terms of legislation, Sharia. With the exception of al-Mu'tazila. Al-Mu'tazila, they have a view about it. or we have some exceptions at certain areas. Like, for example, the Hadith al-Ahad when it conflicts with analogy, or Hadith al-Ahad when it conflicts with, like, for example, the collective mutawatir practice of the people of Medina according to the Malikiyya. These are certain exceptions in certain areas of fiqh. But the massive majority of the Muslims, even Malikis and Hanafis and everybody, they admit the concept that Hadith al-Ahad are a part of Sharia and we can rely on them as a source of Sharia. What they did, there is a group which is called al-Quraniyun. They actually came by mingling with the Western colonizers, and it came later actually. But it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ expected them. But they widespread actually in actually not admitting the authority of Hadith al-Ahad as a source of legislation. That the true controversy goes into relying on Hadith al-Ahad as a source of Aqidah, because this is a controversy which happens even among the many people. And Sheikh al-Albani has a letter about it. You can find it even translated on the internet about Hadith al-Ahad as source of Sharia and Aqidah also.
I had one more question regarding intentions.
Sure.
Yes. So you mentioned that obviously clarifying your intention was part of the shurut of your actions being accepted. So in the context of prayer, as we know, we identified that we have to know what prayer we're praying. If it's a fard or a sunnah, etc. But outside of that, in terms of specificity, do you have to make sure that all three intentions, for example, the one we discussed, are all in line? Or if you accidentally forget one or two of those intentions, does intending one of those intentions validate your action altogether?
Good question. When you, for example, pray an obligatory prayers, you have to fulfill the first condition, which is you intend that it is a prayer, and number two, that this act that you are intending to do is obligatory. This is Zuhr or Asr, and it is obligatory. Okay? You can add congregation if you are making it in congregation or not, but it's not obligatory to have this intention, because even if you can make prayers even in congregation or not, but if you are joining a congregation, you have to do. For example, if it is sunnah prayer, it is sufficient to just intend that it is only prayer. You are intending by your act that you are intending by your act to make prayers. That's it. But if you are making, for example, yes, if it is but if it is sunnah ratiba, which means sunnah which is done before Dhuhr and after Dhuhr, so you have to intend that this is a sunnah of Dhuhr or this is sunnah of Asr. So three occasions. If it is obligatory, you have to intend that it is an act of prayer, it is obligatory, and whether it is Dhuhr or Asr. If it is just sunnah, specified sunnah, so you have to specify, you have to intend that it is prayer, you are intending by your action that you are making prayer, and number two, that it is the specific sunnah that you are performing. If it is nafl mutlaq, absolute nafl, which means it is general prayer that you perform, like qiyamul layl, like normal prayer that you do, just nafl without any restrictions, the only condition for it is just to intend in your heart that you are making prayers. By your action, by making these actions, you are making prayers. That's it. You understand it now?
Yes, Sheikh. And just following on from that, in a separate context, if you intend for a certain action, but then you continue that action for something else. For example, wudu, you intend to make the wudu for Salat al-Maghrib, but then can you use that same intention if you haven't invalidated your wudu? Can you use that same wudu for Salat al-Isha? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. When you are making wudu, for example, you have a general intention of removing the state of ritual impurity. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And by removing this state of ritual impurity by itself allows you to make any act of worship by this wudu, even tawaf, even if you did not intend tawaf, recitation of the Quran, making salah, making one or two or three obligatory prayers together or different. But if you have, the exception is, according to the majority of the scholars, the exception is if you have a continuous disease like continuous bleeding or continuous urination, or a woman who has a menstruation, she has irregular bleeding all the time, istihada. So in this case, when she is making the salah, when she is making wudu, she is not making wudu for two prayers. It's only for one prayer, because there is a hadith about it, and there is a discussion among scholars about it. Okay, because you just temporarily remove the state of ritual impurity for a purpose. So you have to set this purpose in your intention. But the normal wudu that we have, you don't restrict it to a certain act. You understand it? Barakallahu feekum. See you inshallah next time, my brothers and sisters. Barakallahu feekum. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower all His mercy and tranquility on all of you. I'm sorry for coming late, but inshallah next time I will be on time. And also of taking some of your time, or extended the session to compensate some of the time, inshallah. Barakallahu.
Jazakallahu khairan, Shaykhana. We appreciate your extra time and we wish not to burden you, so apologies from our side.
Yes, barakallahu feekum, Shaykh.
The problem is, subhanallah, I thought that our session is on Tuesday. I'm sorry, I did not concentrate. Though I added all the stuff, maybe my basic preparation was actually to make a session on Thursday, and the group of brothers who swayed on Tuesday. This is the reason that but subhanallah, alhamdulillah, it went very well.
Alhamdulillah. Barakallahu feekum. We'll see you next week. And Shaykhana, should we send? I was talking about the quiz, the first quiz. Yes. So, did you want to mention that, or?
Yes, inshallah, for the Umdat al-Ahkam, I will share a quiz in the same folder. So I will, inshallah, by today, I will try to put all the materials for Umdat al-Ahkam. Maybe tomorrow, inshallah, you will find them complete along with the quiz and everything, inshallah.
Inshallah. Barakallahu feekum.
Wa iyyakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.